Welcome to Miriam Studios podcast, sponsored by Second Home. This week we're going to be talking about entrepreneurs, and today we have Tom, who's a creative director and designer, Miriam, the co-founder of Revolt Model Agency, and Pana, a digital designer. Okay, so let's start. Let's start by discussing the reasons why you guys decided to go independent, why you decided to work for yourself.
I think the main reason for me, being a designer, sort of creative, when I was making that decision, I didn't feel like there was like an existing agency that did the type of work that I wanted to do, or at least like looked at it from the same perspective as me. And I've been kind of doing freelance work since I was like 16, so it was kind of like a natural progression just to keep doing that and kind of being a part of my own world. And then kind of like I did uni and then finished uni. And by that point, I already kind of had enough like sort of constant work going, so I continued doing that. So it wasn't really like a conscious decision not to like join something, but it was more just like, you know, following that through. So yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty much the same as me. I am on my gap year at the moment, so I kind of wanted to start a business, and I never really wanted like a basic job. So I thought maybe if I work for myself, that means I can do like emails in bed. I don't have to get up early. So like majority of my work, like I do in the morning, but not early. Like I don't have to commute. I don't have to like do all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to keep myself busy as well during my gap year. So I kind of just decided, you know, I saw a gap in the market in terms of agencies and how commercial agencies don't really cater for people that are shorter, maybe like curvier and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to make a mark in the industry and go kind of my individual way.
The reason I decided to go independent was mostly because I felt like I didn't fit in a lot of the places that I did try to integrate. Firstly that was uni. I decided to do biochemistry as my degree of choice, and that didn't really treat me very well. And then I decided to start freelancing, and I got a job with an agency. And what the agency was doing and how they operated was just not in line with what I would have done. So I decided that, you know, as a medium-term goal was to start my own agency, to offer my services to people as a designer and something a bit more, because I felt like people were just selling effort, like just design for the sake of there being something. So that whole sort of, obviously I know it exists now because I did my research, but that whole client repertoire, that's sitting down with someone and understanding what their goals and values are, I never saw that when I did my sort of job at the agency. So I wanted to do that, and I was happy to find that there's a community behind all of that.
Yeah, I think we're quite lucky to live in London, where it's a place where it's quite easy to be a freelancer and to be your own boss and to start things, even though it's expensive here. But it's also quite easy to do that. Would you guys consider taking a full-time job?
I'd never say never, but probably not. It's mainly about like ownership of my work, and kind of I'm super like hot-headed and kind of stubborn when it comes to what I do, and I feel like that's like half of my drive. But because I've been doing it so like for so long, like on a freelance basis, I can't imagine like I like collaborating with other people and having like an equal voice in that sort of situation, but I can't really imagine now like kind of having to take something that I might not necessarily want to do and kind of roll with that. So for the foreseeable, nah. So at the moment I kind of like run like a creative collective, and we're like developing it into like a fully fledged studio. So that's kind of got its own legs, and I guess eventually I will be like one of those corporate fuckers that I hate. But yeah, like for now it's just about building my own thing, but mainly I want to like kind of create a space and a platform. Like I was saying, like when I came out of uni, I couldn't find myself. Like if it was there, I probably would have joined that, and it didn't exist. So I guess the end goal is to kind of create that rather than join someone else.
Yeah, I pretty much have a full-time job right now. I have to do everything with the agency, so I have to do like taxes, all the boring stuff. Which was like a huge shock for me, because I'd never ever been involved within the fashion industry or creative industry. So I kind of just literally dove into the deep end. But in terms of like working for someone else, I do see that in the future, because But yeah, no, I definitely do see that in the future. But obviously, I still want to work for myself as well as. But you know, in the future, maybe I'll have my own firm as well. So I'll have like 3 businesses going on. But yeah, not right now. I wouldn't want a boss right now. I was going to publish.
I have worked in corporate before. When I was sort of pursuing my digital marketing career, and I realized it's not what I want to do. So I was working for a bank, and the whole suit and tie, it wasn't for me.
I can't imagine you in a suit. I literally can't imagine
at
you.
all. So I mean, I tried to keep it cool with the crop pants and all that. Nah, they weren't
just
having
trying to
it.
make it your own in any way.
Like, we have a uniform, and I was like, I need freedom. That's why I need to break out this lattice, this whole corporate sort of, the idea of working your way to the top in place of someone else. Like, I'd rather pave my own path.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, of course.
I feel like outside of all of that, it's mainly like the fluidity of like being your own boss and like having your own structure. So like, it's kind of like my worst nightmare to be within like a 9-to-5 situation now where I have like a set wage and I know how much I'm making. Like for some people, like that security is like everything and the reason why they wouldn't go freelance. But for me, that's like the drive, because I know like if I hustle and kind of put my foot down, I can like double, triple, whatever in a year. It's like on me.
Yeah.
So if I fuck up, like that's me. If I succeed, it's on me. And that's like the other reason I wouldn't want to kind of be under someone else.
Yeah. So I guess we all kind of agreeing that gives you more freedom to be yourself and work in your way.
Yeah.
And I think freedom to creatives is such an important thing, because creative processes, I don't think you can really force that, and you can't be contained in like a 9-to-5. So would you say there's kind of a misconception for like independent workers and entrepreneurs that you guys have more free time and that you just sit at home and kind of do what you want? What do you think you're busier than someone who works a 9-to-5 creative job or any 9-to-5 job?
I would say so, yeah. I think the way that I kind of fell into design and kind of this creative world, I guess, is because it's like what I'm passionate about. So there really isn't like a kind of line or like a way of distinguishing between like
work and play.
kind of, it's like all one and the same. And kind of free time just doesn't sound right to me, because I value my time like way too much. So like the idea of it being free or like worth less than other time, it just sounds kind of weird and like off to me. So like I don't think free time's like, time is what you make of it. So like if you want to make something free time, that's cool. For me, that's like not what I'd want to do. Downtime for sure, slower time, but not like free time. Yeah.
I think, do you guys think that maybe you decided to become entrepreneurs because you would do want your work life to be completely coinciding with your normal life, and you want those two things, like you want your work to be your life?
Yeah, I feel like that cohesion is what I've always wanted, because I feel like I'm still working towards that. But, you know, my long-term goal is to be able to have a work-life integration that's not disruptive to things like my mental health or family time or my cash flow. Like, I want to be able to make money but not feel like I'm really working, but just doing what I feel like I do best. But yeah, it's a journey, and, you know, it's, like Tom said, it's just, you take each day or each month like by the horns and just see where it goes. And that drive of not knowing what's going to come up and what bigger opportunities are going to come up, that's what's fun. I don't like the constraint of knowing that you wake up at 9 and you work until 5 and then you close, like you run out of the office. Like you don't want anything to do with that. I know very few people who work 9-to-5s who talk about work outside of their 9-to-5, unless it's like complaint, you know, like, whereas my life is around work, like the events I go to, the people I hang out with, even though we're not working, it's like it all complements like my social life, and just, it's just an easier way to, I feel, to integrate myself within society than to force myself to do something that I really don't want to do. Yeah,
I feel like my free time is pretty much like events to do with the fashion industry, and I'm still always networking, and it's never really like free time. And I kind of sometimes am envious of people that work 9-to-5 jobs, because I know that I get emails at like 12:30 at night from like casting directors asking for a model at 8 a.m. in the morning, and it's just like, I can't even deal with that stress. Like, it's just too much. So sometimes I do kind of want to cut off at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m., but it never happens. So I normally work into the night and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's still cool because I'm doing stuff that I love. But at the same time, it's stressful when you're like not having much sleep and you're doing certain things and you're getting all these jobs, and it's great because you're making money, but at the same time, like, you have to do all this kind of stuff by yourself. So yeah.
And what kind of risks have you guys taken being an entrepreneur? Would you say that there's a significant risk that you've personally been through, or maybe some of the risks that entrepreneurs generally go through?
Yeah, I guess money. Like, when you kind of like jump out the window and decide that you want to kind of be freelance, like, you take that security blanket away from you, and that's kind of the biggest risk, I guess. But it's kind of like what we were saying before, like, that's kind of half the drive as well, and kind of half the, I guess, excitement's maybe the right word behind it or whatever. But yeah, like, I guess that's the most obvious risk. But then I like thinking like a little bit deeper, probably again, just before I got my time management in place, like the risk of like, you know, not knowing when to switch off, and then kind of like, you know, I'd go like weeks without seeing friends, and they'd be like, "You good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, oh shit, like
Still alive?"
I'm alive, by the way, yeah." Or, you know, there's been times where like I spent like a large period just like working from home, like still do like most of the time, and it'd be like a Monday, and then I'd like leave the house on maybe like a Friday, and I'm like, shit, like I haven't done anything like outside of like this house this week. And I guess that's kind of like, you know, kind of putting your mental health on the line a little bit, but it's just having that kind of, the balance is important. Like when you don't exist in that kind of like regular sort of structure that you kind of get thrust into with like a traditional job. Yeah, it's kind of like what I said before, it's just all got to be on you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it is a big risk. In order to kind of like even start a company, it could just be like a massive flop. Like it could just be dissolved within the first like 4 weeks. So like starting a company, it was like a huge thing because it was a gamble in a sense that obviously I knew nothing about the creative industry when I first went into it. So to kind of become successful in the kind of agency that I created is like a huge reward though, because obviously there's risks and rewards. And I feel like that's the best like kind of outcome in terms of everyone has to take a risk, because otherwise it's just going to be really boring. Like if you're going into a job that's secure and all that kind of stuff, like I just feel like, you know, you're not taking a risk at all. Like you're not going in, you're not taking your passion and doing something with it. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like my point is just a repetition of the two prior, but yeah, risk is fun. Like if you think theme parks and, you know, fast cars, like there's always that chance of like, what's going to happen. But obviously you don't want the worst to happen. But it's just the thrill of being on the edge of not paying your rent.
Is that a thrill, really?
I mean, you know, because you end up doing things that you didn't know you could do. To like that's really how I ended up stretching myself. Like taking on new briefs that I haven't actually done before and learning just because I found the client.
Yeah, because you need that
kind
paycheck.
Of stuff. It's you don't really get that in a really safe, comfortable environment. If you worked for an agency, you'd only get given stuff that was on your CV. And if you wanted to break from that, the director or the creative director wouldn't want to take that risk with their job or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Obviously, I feel like us here with our own agent, we're going to end up being those people not taking the risk. But you know, while we're on that journey, it's like, it's all a risk. Like, you never know what could happen, especially when you're reliant on like your clients and you don't have like an expandable, like scalable model. Yeah. Anyone could just decide, hey, I don't want your services anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, and there's nothing you can do about that apart from just being agile and learning not to panic when you're in a panic situation. Because that can really change the dynamic of like bad news, you know.
Well, it teaches you to be resourceful, because if you've got no other option and you need to pay rent, you're gonna try and find that do something to make money. You could, I mean, I don't know what.
Whoa.
I mean, I don't mean like that. Kind of what, have you guys ever been in any like really situation?
Nah, not Oh, let me save this real quick. Why have I got the mic in my hand?
Yeah, we're looking at you, Tom.
Yeah.
Has there been months where you've really worried about, but you're doing well, like so well now?
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you can do all the work and then, you've had like a really productive month, but if those companies aren't paying their invoices on time, like, when it's out of your hands, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of, it kind of contradicts what I said before about having full control of something. Like, if they're not paying you, like, that's, so there's been like some times where I've taken on like multiple bigger projects over like a period of months, and I might take like 50% up front and the rest whatever, but if the project keeps rolling and rolling like longer than you expected, and then you're like waiting on those payments at the end, like if everything isn't lined up and you don't have like cash flow in place, like it's kind of tough.
Yeah.
So there's been like a few months where that's kind of maybe been the tone, but then it always kind of like rights itself. So it's never been like a downhill drop.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
good.
Ups and downs, but like it kind of
that's
gradually
good.
going up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to people who are kind of thinking about going to be self-employed or their own business, set up their own businesses? What kind of tools and hacks have you guys thought of?
Oh, I've got the eye.
I was going to go, but...
Tools and hacks. I'd definitely say, firstly, like starting a company isn't just about starting a company. It's not the certificate or the company incorporation or like that
was
all
so
of that
exciting.
It's cool. It's cool. It's really cool. But then it's like, what's behind that? What's in front of that? What's around that? Like, what is that? It just means you're legal now. Like, it just means you can take money and not be arrested for it. Really,
That's
like.
basically
So yeah, I just definitely think market research is incredibly important, especially in. There's many industries, in fact, fashion, that you'll see brands that come out day after day, like someone's pressing clone, you know what I mean? And obviously that's within fashion, but that goes for the same with any industry, to be honest. If you really want to set yourself apart and make sure that you have an idea that people will buy into, don't give people what they already have access to. And if that's what you want to do, then obviously you have to bear that in mind and understand that you will be less significant, and whatever you're doing there's competition. So yeah, lots of market research. And market research is a big term, it's a big word. Just ask your friends and people who are in the field that you're trying to enter. That's probably number one. That's probably the thing that was probably most helpful for me, like mentorship almost. And then number two is there's a lot of like online tools and like softwares that have helped me where I lack the skill, like in terms of things like finance management, cash flow management, project management. There's like a million tools. Half of them are free, and the ones that you do pay for are so worth it. Especially when it comes to things like project management, being away from a physical mode of like tracking where I am with a project is so useful. You can share that with clients. It's digital. It's safe-ish. Because I'm just thinking, what if their servers just disappear? But yeah, there's a few, like in terms of finances, that's where I worried the most, because all my friends who I know have an accountant, and I was like, I don't want to have an accountant. Really, I just don't like the idea of it. So there's like tools that help you do it, and it's just as good as having an accountant. But then you can see really where your money's actually going, because I like to know from like the drinks I buy in a club when I'm drunk to the invoices I'm chasing. I like to know the full scope of where my money's going, because it's really important. For me at least.
I feel like with starting a business, I just feel like you shouldn't overthink it, because if I went into everything that I had to do for this business, I genuinely wouldn't have started it from like the beginning. I wouldn't have done it, because it's just like it sounds so daunting for someone. So I feel like you need to like just go into it, and then all the kind of obstacles, you just kind of tackle them when they come. Because I feel like if you start thinking about different problems that can happen if you start a business, then you're just never going to start it, and something's never going to come from it. So I feel like, yeah, obviously do your research, do your market research, do all that kind of stuff. But in terms of like going really deep into what kind of could happen, I don't think you should do that. And I feel like you should just kind of jump into the deep end. And problems will come, but you'll learn how to like deal with them, and you'll be fine. So I started the business when I was doing my A-level exams, so it was very intense at that time, and most people didn't think I could do anything with it. but I did, and I proved all them like people wrong. But yeah, I feel like if you can do it during exams, you can do it whenever you want. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, like kind of just to add on to that, I'd say like not to be scared of kind of making mistakes. Like a lot of people are like scared to even start it in the first place because they're like, oh, I don't want to suck or I don't want to fail. But like you're going to, especially if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing it right, because you always need to like test yourself and like level up and level up. So yeah, like that's all part of the process. And if anything, the more mistakes you make at the start, like the better, because then you have like more perspective that you can kind of tie back into your work as you move forward. And then I guess from like a sort of creative industry side, like again, like your own perspective is like the most important thing. It's kind of like what you're saying, like there's so many other people who want to be in your position. And like, yeah, like your skill set and everything has to be like there. But then it's like, if you can't like, you know, if you're in a position with a client and they've brought you on specifically because your work is good, but also because you understand the culture behind that project or whatever, like that's going to give you like a sort of leg up on the next person. So it's just kind of like not being afraid of like putting yourself into like your company or your brand or whatever too, because like you can make like say if you're starting like a streetwear brand or something, you can make like the cleanest looking, coolest looking, like, you know, logo based Supreme Palace knockoff or whatever, but like it already exists, you know, like 20 million times. So you got to find like your niche and like your own voice, and then just like build on top of that, no matter how weird or scary that might be.
Yeah, definitely. No, actually I have a question. I just want to ask you guys, what's the kind of most stressful thing about being an entrepreneur? Is it being like responsible for, maybe if you have employees, it's being responsible for them and their salaries, or is it, I don't know, what else stresses you guys out?
I feel like for me, because our company obviously manages loads of models, there's like a huge kind of weight in terms of like trying to get them as much money. And if you're not getting certain models not enough money, then it's like, it's really stressful. Like you feel like there's a huge burden on you to get models money. And sometimes it's not even your fault. Like obviously being a really young agency, we're not going to have like the huge clientele that, you know, some really huge commercial agencies have. But for some reason, all these models kind of expect to be modelling and doing jobs like 5 times a day, and it's like we can't do that. So there's like a huge pressure on that, and that really stresses me out a lot of the time. But like even the legal stuff, taxes and stuff, like my sister obviously really helps me out with that, because obviously she's a co-founder of the company. And yeah, she's like really good with that. But I learned, because we had an accountant for the first couple of months, and then we learned from the accountant how to do it ourselves to kind of save costs. So that was kind of like, it was stressful at first, but then once you learn how to do all the numbers and the figures and all that kind of stuff, it was fine. But I'd say, yeah, the most stressful thing is kind of the pressure on us to get models as many jobs as we can. And that's like a huge pressure to have, because obviously some of them, like, modelling's the only thing they do. So it's not just us we're trying to survive as a company, it's them trying to survive as a model. So yeah, I'd say that.
I was actually thinking, but no, I just can't decide, because I get stressed very easily. But I feel like one of the most stressful things is, like Tom mentioned earlier, is definitely invoicing people. And there's nothing you can do. I don't want to get into specifics, but it's just like, you just have to deal with it. And you just have to wait, and it's just painful, if I'm completely honest. It almost feels like a disrespect of, like, someone came and asked for my services or a product or something, and then when it comes to paying, they don't want the design anymore. It's like, but you're using it, like, I mean, things like that, or people rejecting your proposals, and then you see your work on the internet. That is actually copyright. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, copyright, like people stealing your work. And yeah, that's probably the two that have given me the most headache, because they get into more legal territory, which I don't have any legal experience, and like you have to pay. If I want someone to do something, I'm gonna have to pay someone to look into it. A lawyer, or I don't even know, like a solicitor or something, like someone to, you know, because they signed the proposal, there's dates, and like they're missing the dates, and like there comes a time when you're just cool with your client, but then you need to switch. without switching. You have to be like, hey, like, have you had a look at the invoice without being like, like, I need to eat. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I don't like that. Yeah, just chasing people.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, for sure. What else can I add on? I guess, like, the thing that kind of sets, like, I guess, like, creative work apart from traditional work where you just kind of, like, get your head down and do it is you have to be in that mode where you're, like, ready to produce ideas and actually create. And sometimes, like, you know, if your back's up against the wall with, like, deadlines and they're all mounting up against each other and you just have to, like, get in that mode to, like, do it, it's, like, impossible. And then you just can't get, you know, onto the next one or the next one. You just kind of, like, get in this little hole where you're just like, I suck. Like,
I hate my life.
Maybe I will join that agency after all, or, like, McDonald's or...
Just Googling.
Yeah, but then, like, when you have that breakthrough, again, it's, like, the most inspiring thing. Just, like, yeah, I got past that, like, all right, on to the next one, and then you have that momentum to keep building. So, like, it's all just balance, really. Like, you know, what's the most stressful to you at one point is, like, the most inspiring thing, like, the next day, and vice versa. Like, you might be super inspired by something you've seen and then get stressed out by the fact that you can't, you know, create something on that level. Like, it's just give and take. But I think having that ability to, like, kind of take a step back, take a breath, like, come back at it the next day or an hour later or whatever is, like, key. So just patience, really. Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. It's been really great. Thank you for coming to Arium Studios podcast.